Today, instead of the silver Sharpie, I went in with like a brown. It looks a little bit more natural. But as you can see, we have our lines drawn on again today. And we also have 2 bundles of 12-inch straight that we'll go in with our 13x6 frontal to just make this bob nice and full. And again, also please note that since we have our extended frontal here, it'll also give an illusion that it has 3 bundles. So that's what we have going on today. I already have my handy dandy needle and thread, and we do have our nylon again today as well to sew this unit. And as you can see, with this 13x6, I already have my T-pins in place here to kind of help secure the frontal, so that as I sew, I can just kind of remove the T-pins out versus holding the frontal and sewing at the same time. So I'm just gonna flip over Miss Bubbles here today and take out my first T-pin and begin sewing. Huh? Give out your social media. Oh, I forgot. You're right. Also, too, my social media is at the Wig Lab. You can find me there on Instagram and also TikTok. That's the only 2 social media platforms I have right now currently. We are just getting started and it's already tangled up. Let me just get it out. Okay, great. So as I've already kind of stated in some of my other recent videos that we've shared, is that I highly recommend the nylon thread. It just doesn't tangle as much. And a lot of times if it does tangle, you're able to kind of get through the knots. So I highly recommend trying the nylon thread if you have not already tried it. So I'm just taking my needle and I'm repeating the same step over and over again. I feel like with the frontal, you have the option to kind of go in and out. Wait, hold on. I think the thread is actually tangled this time. Let me just see what's going on. Give me just a second. Okay, there we go. I think it's okay now. Let me just do one more just to be sure. Okay, good. I think we're good now. But yes, when I sew on my frontals, I don't get really fancy about how I'm going in with my needle and thread. I just like to take it in and out and kind of simply place it across. It creates like a very neat flat lining. So I don't double knot or any of that when I'm doing my frontal. And I've never had any issues with the frontal coming apart or anything like that by not double knotting it when I'm done. So I highly recommend just keeping this piece as flat as possible. And again, as I come up on this next T-pin, I'm just going to continue to hold down this portion of the wig and take out the following T-pin to make it easier to continue to sew. Let me also turn her around just a little bit so that you guys are able to see and follow along. I'm actually really excited to make this wig and see how it turns out. I've never made a side part frontal wig, so I'm really excited to see what the finishing product looks like. And again, we do have a 13x6 frontal, meaning that a lot of times I think when I make bob units, I prefer to use 2.5 bundles, but due to us having a larger frontal, it requires only 2 bundles. And you always want to make sure like your bob is not too thick too, but also full enough to give a nice natural look. And that is what we are achieving today. Again, I'm going to remove my next T-pin here and just stick it down in the front of the unit or the dome head and continue to sew. And again, guys, you guys can find me on social media at miss.asjah to check out some of my work or ask me any follow-up questions you have regarding this 13x6 frontal HD lace unit I'm making today. So again, I'm just going to continue to repeat the same process by removing my T-pin and putting it in the front of the unit just to get it completely out the way so that the thread does not get tangled in it, and continue to sew. So I'm just going to turn her upward a little bit just so that it is nice and straight and I can focus on the center of the unit. And I'm just going to continue to sew. And also too, when you are making your needle and thread, make sure that you don't make the thread too short to where you have to keep stopping and tying and starting over, but also don't make it too long to where you're starting to step on it and get it tangled. So yeah, just make sure that I would always say like arm's length is a nice length to make your needles and threads. And on average, when I make units, I try to keep around 15 just to be safe. But in this case today, I made like around 10 of them since we only have 2 bundles to sew in. And I always pre-prep these before beginning the units. It just kind of helps it move quickly. So I highly recommend going to your local beauty supply store and or Amazon to get your preference of needles in bulk, so that way you're able to prep them before you begin to sew. That way you don't have to keep relying on that same needle to keep every time it runs out, you know, restitching, starting over. So I'm going to take out my next needle here, stick it in the front of the unit, and continue to sew. So let me turn her this way now so we can sew the left hand side of the wig. Just gonna prop her this way and we will continue stitching. And now I'm just going to continue to repeat the same process until I reach the end of the frontal. Also too, guys, if you have not tried an HD frontal, I highly recommend them. They look super natural. It looks like it's coming directly out of your scalp. The lace is a little thinner, so it looks a little bit more natural and flat to the scalp. Of course, as you know, I'll share some of the things I do once I install my units. But the very first thing that I do is after I finish my unit is I go in with some bleach, like the powder bleach. I think I use Quick Blue right now. I think that's my favorite one. I've kind of like my go-to. And the reason is because I like to use that brand because I feel like it takes some of the brassiness out of the units. So I like the Quick Blue. I go with Quick Blue and I typically use 40 developer volume to help lighten the unit quickly, and I usually leave that on for about 20 minutes. But I will say, you know, everyone uses a different hair vendor, so if you're not familiar with that hair vendor, I highly recommend starting off with maybe a 20 volumer just until you get more comfortable bleaching the knots, because you don't want to fry the top of the wig. So if it's your first time, definitely start off with 20. But if you're more familiar with the vendor, feel free to use 30 or 40 and leave it on for about 15 to 20 minutes. And, you know, continue to take a peek at it. And then that's how you get that natural look under your frontal before applying. Also, too, another thing here that is available at Private Label, and I'll show you because I know we're kind of talking through some tips. You have like these kind of wig caps. They are also here at Private Label too, and we have different shades to accommodate different skin tones here. But yes, you apply that wig first before going in applying your unit. You want to make sure that cap is flat on your head, and you can go in with like got to be spray to help melt the wig cap. So you could do that simultaneously. That's what I do when I'm at home while I'm making my wigs and about to get ready to apply them. While the bleach is sitting on, a lot of times I like to go in and begin to start applying my unit by using one of the caps that I just showed you guys and recommended. Highly recommend those. You don't have to put those under your wigs, but it does help add to the natural hairline under your wig. And you can also apply like makeup over those caps. They already come very thin, so it protects your braids. If you are applying a gloss or a strong gel over your hair, it protects your edges. But definitely when you're making your frontal, take your time and make sure that you're placing it how you want to lay. I would say this is probably the most important step when you are making a custom unit, just because you always want to make sure that it's nice and flat and also applied neatly and does not have lumps in it. And then I'm just going to continue to sew and repeat the same steps. So I'm just going to take out another one of these T-pins to flatten out this portion. And also too, when you're sewing your frontal, it is completely normal to have some excess at the bottom of the cap, the wig head. You don't have to cut it. Once you put it on your head and customize it to your liking, then you can cut off the excess hair. But it does not mean that you are working on the wig incorrectly. If it is hanging off, that actually means that it's applied correct, which is just straight across the unit. I actually think, let's make sure this is not tangled. Dang. Okay, cool. For some reason today, my thread just keeps getting tangled. But anyway, I'm going to continue to sew. Sew. So I'm going to take out my last T-pin here at the bottom and just finish up sewing on the frontal. And then we will go in or begin to sew in with our bundle. And again, for the bundles, we have 2 straight bundles and they are 12 inches. Which is pretty much all that you need if you're trying to create a bob unit. 12 inches is typically enough unless you want a super long straight cut bob. So I'm going to just make my final knot here. And then I'm going to go with my scissors. So I got some new scissors off Amazon that I really like. They are some shears off Amazon. They were like $12, but they are like super smooth. So I highly recommend Amazon for, you know, quick hair products that you use all the time. A lot of times you can find it on Amazon for cheaper than you can in your local beauty supply store. So always check out Amazon if you do have time to wait and are not in a rush. You have a lot of times a more variety of products that you may like to use. So just keep that in mind as you're shopping around for, you know, like scissors and thread, T-pins, things that you may use often. So now that I've knotted it, I'm just going to go with my scissors here today, or my shears, and just cut off the excess thread. And then now I'm going to position the wig slightly different just so we can begin to sew in our bundles. So I'm going in with my first bundle of 12-inch. Yes, and I'm going to cut this really quickly. So I'm just going to go with my scissors, cut it, and slowly unravel it so that it does not get tangled. Okay, so I'm gonna, oh wait, what did I do with the needle? I don't know what I did with the needle I just had. I don't know what I did with the one I just had, but I guess I can just, oh, it is. Ah, it was blending in. My bad. Okay, so now I'm just gonna start with the nape of the unit. Again, I'm just gonna start on the line at the bottom of the unit with double track first, just to make sure I get all of the hair in. I'm just gonna go in with my needle and begin to go in with the double weft. I've seen that some people sometimes sew their wefts together. So you do have the option to sew the wefts together if you feel like you're not comfortable stitching 2 wefts at a time. If you are new to double tracking, try that out if that's better for you. But you can just also stitch them together as you go. Whichever one feels most comfortable to you, that is optional. Okay, cool. It was a little tangled. So I'm going to take this and just kind of prop it up a little bit because it's kind of hard to do both at the same time sometimes. So I'm just going to stitch that like. So when you start the wig, as you guys already probably know or familiar with, is at the bottom of the wig, the wefts are a little thicker, or the bottom of the wig cap, I'm sorry, is a little thicker. So you have to be a little patient with sewing in and out. So I'm just going to go in with my T-pin and hold it and secure it for me while I sew on my double weft. So now that I'm approaching the end of this row, I'm just going to remove the T-pin I added in to secure it. And then go in with my scissors and cut off the excess for that row. Sorry about that. I was trying to pull her up, but she went the other way. She went the other way. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as you guys can see, we now have our first track here for our bob. And let me get the scissors. Oh, and we're just going to cut. And as always, once you cut, make sure that you double knot it to secure the weft. Okay, perfect. Now I'm just going to go with my scissors and cut it. And then you just want to make sure that you always knot the leftover thread so you can use it for the upcoming row. Just going to prop her head down so that we can begin to sew here. I'm also going to go in with my T-pin one more time just because we're at the bottom of the nape here of the wig and it's kind of hard to hold both. So let me just place this here. Okay, so now that I have it secured, I want to go back in with my needle and thread and begin to sew. Oh, also too, I forgot to mention for this wig, I am doing ear to ear. So that means that the entire part of the wig cap is covered and is fully covered with the bundle, which is totally optional. You don't have to do it that way. You can also not sew on the thick band if you like, if you don't like to. But if you decide to, I always recommend cutting the weft so that it allows the wig to lay more flat. I'm going to remove this T-pin. So I'm just going to flip over the unit and continue to sew. And remove our last T-pin here. Okay, so now I'm approaching the end of this thread, so I'm just going to cut it and move in, go in with my second needle and continue to sew. Just I'm gonna go with my scissors and cut this since we have reached the end of this row. And I'm just going to go in again and make sure that I double knot the thread to secure the end of the row. Okay, great. Now I'm go in with my scissors and cut off the excess thread again, and then I'm just going to turn her over just a little bit. Oh, something is stuck. I thought I had already knocked up that piece, but I guess it got stuck. Sometimes when you're making wigs, I swear, random threads just come out of nowhere. I'm like, I don't even know how I got there. So I'm just gonna knot that up, secure it, and cut it. Perfect. Then now I'm going to re-knot this portion and begin sewing our next row. Just gonna bend her down a little bit more. And then I'm gonna go in with my T-pin again. Okay, now I'm just gonna begin sewing again, but repeating the same process, just going straight across, close to the line as possible. We're having some challenges here. I'm just gonna take it off. Sorry. Might wanna, I'm just gonna take that part off for this particular row. I didn't like how that was going. Okay, so now I'm just gonna continue to sew. Now I'm just gonna adjust my T-pin to secure it. and continue to sew. Just going to go ahead on and grab another thread, being that this one is about to end. So now I'm just going to cut the rest of this row. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my scissors and cut the thread so I can knot it. So now I'm going to cut the excess thread and make sure that all miscellaneous thread pieces are all cut. Now I'm just going to turn her back this way so we can begin to sew our next row. And just stick the needle and thread in so I can get my T-pin all set up. So I want to prop her up a little bit. Now that I have my T-pins in, nice and secure, I'm going to begin to sew. And basically, guys, we just continue to repeat this same process until we get to the top of the frontal. Just make sure to hold the wefts together and in place to where you want to place them and continue to sew. I'm going to continue to remove the T-pins as I sew. You can also remove them if you like, but I'm sorry, leave them in if you like, but I prefer to remove them as I sew so I won't forget about them being in the unit. Okay, so now we're just going to continue to stitch. And as we come to the end of this row, we just want to make sure that it is double knotted. And then we will repeat the same process on the following row. Okay, so now that we have it nice and tight, we're just going to cut off the excess thread and then continue to sew. And again, I'm going to go in with my T-pins to secure the track. Okay, so I'm going to go back in with another thread and continue to sew here. So now I'm just going to turn the unit over just a little bit so we can see the right hand side of the wig. Continue to stitch. Let me also get the scissors so I can cut the excess part off. Oh no. Okay, so I'm going to continue to sew. And then you, as always, when you begin to get closer to the top, you want to make sure that the end of the track touches the tan part or the thicker border part of the frontal, but do not sew over it. So that is a very important key point to consider when, or to keep in mind as you get closer to the top of the unit. And then you just continue to stitch and just make sure that it's, continue to pull the thread as you sew and make sure that it's nice and tight. Let me just cut this piece out. Okay. So I'm going to go in with one more double row, and then I am going to single track the rest of the unit. And again, the only reason why a lot of wig makers like to double some of the tracks is just to make sure that all of the hair fits inside of the wig. So let me go in with another thread. I'm kind of clumsy today. Okay, cool. So I'm going to begin to sew this next row, and I'm going in with my last and final double track here. And then again, I'm just going to make sure I'm sewing extremely close to the thick portion of the frontal band, but not sewing directly on it, just close to it. And I'm just going in with my needle and thread. Just gonna turn the head over, and I am coming to an end with this bundle, but that's okay. I'm just gonna start with the next bundle, but for now I'm just gonna continue to sew. Okay, we have reached the end of this bundle, and now I'm just going to cut the thread and knot it. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to begin to use my final bundle here. Oop, I believe I forgot to knot it. Sorry. Just gonna knot the end of the thread. Okay, now we will begin to sew. Okay, perfect. Now we have finished that row, and we will single track the rest of the unit. And just cut this really quickly. And then I'm just gonna double knot it, and then we can begin single tracking the rest of the unit. Okay, perfect. It's nice and tight. Gonna cut out the excess thread. And then now I'm going to turn her over so you guys can see how we look so far. This is right now with our one bundle of 12-inch. As you can see, it's nice and full already. So now we're just going to add that one single track bundle to kind of fill in the rest of the space here. And then will be ready. So let me get another track and then we will begin stitching. Okay, perfect. So now that we have it stitched, now we can begin sewing. I'm just going to place the head down some so I can see, and then I'm going to go in with my needle and thread and attach it to the width. So now I'm just going to continue to sew and stitch. We bend her head down a little bit. Okay, now I'm just going to grab my scissors. Okay, perfect. Okay, and we are now done stitching this row. Make sure that was nice and tight. I'm gonna stick my pin in, well, my needle at the top just so I won't misplace it inside of the unit. Let's just brush the unit down a little bit. Okay, perfect. Now that we have tightened that piece, we will begin stitching our next row here. Okay, so I'm going to continue to stitch. And again, guys, my social media is at the Wig Lab. You're able to check out some of my work there. Also, too, if you have any questions in regards to how I made this unit or any questions, feel free to message me there. This unit will be available today at Private Label. So if you have any questions or want to pick up this unit today, feel free to hit us up on social media or come into our Atlanta store location. So, okay, I'm going to cut this piece. We're almost done with this row. Okay, so I'm going to continue to, well, let me turn her over this way so we can see. And then I'm going to continue to just stitch this down. Okay, perfect. So now I'm just going to stick the thread back in at the top of the unit, and then I'm going to repeat the same process by cutting a little piece of thread, just enough to tie it in a knot, cut the excess thread, and tie it in a knot again. Okay, perfect. I'll get my scissors, cut it really quick. In. Okay, perfect. So we're going to continue to sew. As you can see, we're reaching the top of the unit, which is fine. Just want to make sure that you keep everything nice and flat. Make sure you're no longer doing no double tracks this close to the top. Also, another good thing is anytime you're wearing a bob unit, they are good for all seasons of the year, so you can never go wrong with it. You could feel free to start off with a little black, then maybe add in a little 613 for a little highlight effect. You can also dye this wig. You could do the water dip method to do like an orange or a brown for the fall, since we're currently inside of the fall. But you have a lot of different options that you could do with the bob. You could do an asymmetrical bob. You could do a straight blunt cut bob. So those are just some cute ideas and things that you can try when trying out a bob for the fall. I'm going to turn the unit this way a little bit. So here, as you guys can see, I'm at the part to where I want to put in one more track, and this will close in this space. At every time you make the frontal, the sides close sooner before the middle. So I'm going to now just close in this gap down here. Again, I'm going to cut the excess thread and not the remaining thread. Then again, I'm going to begin to go in with my needle and thread and begin to stitch the following row. Also, too, when you're sewing, you want to make sure that as you get closer to the top, you make sure that you at least leave, I would say, ring finger length apart of the tracks. Just you want to make sure that they're close, but not necessarily overlapping each other. Otherwise, it will cause a lump at the top, and you don't want to do that. So just always be very careful and make sure that the tracks are not at all overlapping each other as you get closer to the top of the unit. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with the weft again and just continue to close in the space. As you can see, we're almost at the part of the unit where the wefts and the frontal meet. So I'm just going to continue to kind of leave a nice space in between so that the tracks don't overlap, and also to bring in and connect the frontal to the unit itself. Let me go in with my scissors, cut this piece. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to go with my scissors again and just cut the excess thread so I could tie a knot, and then we will go in with our final rows. Then as always, go in and double check and see if we can add any excess hair that we have left over, just to make sure the unit is nice and full, ladies. So now I am at the top of the unit where I am beginning to connect the weft to the frontal. And again, I'm sewing very close to it, but not over it. So just make sure you hold it in place as you begin to sew. Let me cut the excess hair again. Okay. I'm just going to make sure that this top piece is nice and secure. So I'm just going to go over it a couple times. Okay, perfect. Now that it is nice and flat, I'm going to go in with my scissors and tie a knot. It's just this one piece here where I'm going to go in and add a track in. And then from here, we will begin to do a style. We're going to do a side part straight today. We just go ahead on and turn my utensils on while I sew in this final track. Oh, not coming on, but okay, it came on. So we're just going to go in and sew in the excess hair wherever it can fit in the wig. This is not required. This is just something that I like to do just to ensure that I use majority of the client's hair that they provide me with. Because a lot of times if they gave you 4 bundles, they want them all in there because they want a full unit. So just keep that in mind. You can anytime you're making a unit with over 3 bundles, you can double track some of them. Just make sure you always do the bottom bundle so that either way it won't make the wig lumpy. I just prefer to single track the top portion of the wig and only double track the bottom portion of the unit. And if you have any questions as to how to do that or have had challenges in the past, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram on the Wig Lab or in the comments below the video. Okay, now I'm just gonna cut off the excess hair here. So we don't have too much hair left over. We have like this little piece here and just a very other little small little piece, which is not too bad, which is how I prefer, well, the amount of hair I prefer to have left over, which is not too much, just very small piece. I'm just going to sew this last little part on nice and tight. And then we will move on to the styling portion of this video tutorial. Okay, perfect. We are done stitching. Now let's pull her all down and brush her. It's always a good time for a bob. You can wear a bob year round. So it's always good to have a nice bob in the closet. Another thing I do too with my units that may help you guys is after I make a unit, I always label like what the inch was, what the layer was, because a lot of times, especially with like frontals and closures, yes, they look nice and they're very protective, but over time you will eventually need a new closure or frontal. So just always label what exactly you purchased so that way it's easy to remember what you had, and then you won't have issues in the future when it's time to replace them. Okay, here she is. Okay, so let me just take her off really quick and then reposition her for styling. Their pin, no, it's not been there. Okay, so I'm just gonna place her here. Okay, there we go. Now I'm just going to part the unit. Let me also put a pin in the back so that it's secure. Okay, perfect. So that should be good now. So as always, I'm just going to go in with my wax stick that I always use by Cara here, just to mold the hair down. Then I want to go with my hot comb. Can also move her over here just a little bit. We need to turn her this way for just a second. I'll turn this way so you can see us a little better. Let's see what we have here. Oh, we also have a Private Label wax stick too over here. We use some of this today just to get the unit nice and flat. And again, the wax stick just helps the wig lay extremely flat. To kind of mold it down for whatever style you're trying to do. Let me just readjust the wig a little bit more on the cap. Okay, that should help some. Let me go in with my comb again. I'm just flattening out the ends for now a little bit. And I'm not going to cut the hair, but I am going to trim the ends just so that it has a nice, clean, blunt cut here. Usually, you could just cut like the middle back portion. That's usually the portion that's slightly longer than the rest of the wig. So we just cleaned that up a little bit. We didn't really take any of her inches off. Just kind of cleaned her up and gave her more of a crisp, clean look for her ends. And now we can go in and straighten her out a little bit. Let me actually clip this half together. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see what kind of product we want to use today. Oh, that's Glow and Shine spray. Just oil. Okay, so we're gonna go in with some of our hair serum here. Hair Life by Private Label. Just gonna use just a little bit of it. It's kind of sticky. Go in with just a little bit of that to kind of help lay the hair nice and pretty. Now I'm just going to go in with my flat iron. Okay, perfect. Now we're just going to go to the other side and kind of bump this side down as well. Okay, so I'm just going to turn her this way so we can see. And again, I'm just going to go back in with my flat iron again and just kind of bump the ends down. Go in with my comb. Oop, she almost fell over. Okay, cool. So we're just gonna continue to kind of bump the hair out. Okay, I'm just gonna lift her back up a little bit. And then I'm just going to flatten out the top portion of the wig. Go in with the comb. And these are just quick little tricks and tips that you can do to make your unit nice and flat before applying it on. And the only thing I'm doing, guys, is, hold on, when I get to this next little piece, I'll walk you through exactly what I'm doing. So I'm first parting the hair, a very thin layer, and I'm going in with my flat iron first. After you put a couple passes through it, then I go in with my wax stick and kind of mold the hair down a little bit, then go in with your hot comb. This will really help your wig lay more flat. So I highly recommend doing this to making your units look flatter before applying. And you just continue to do that whole repeated process over and over again, regardless if it's a frontal and or closure. These steps will help increase how flat the unit applies. And the only thing I'm doing now, guys, is I'm going in with a little got to be. And the got to be just holds in place what you just pretty much did with your wax stick. So the got to be will help secure it and hold it into place. Hold on, my hot comb went out. I'm not really sure why. Oh, it unplugged. Sorry about that. 1 second, guys. Okay. So we're going to wait for the hot comb to come back on. To finish this portion up. Okay, so I'm just waiting for the hot comb to come back on. I'm going to put a little bit of this glow show on to give the hair a little bit of a shine. Just going to put a little bit on my hands and kind of rub through the ends of the hair. I really like this product. It added a nice shine to the unit, as well as make the hair lay nice and clean. Okay, this should be almost hot again, so I'm gonna go back in with my hot comb now that it's back on. Huh? Okay. But I can't move this like too far or it's gonna go out again. Okay, so now I'm just going to go in with a little bit more got to be to make sure it's secure, and then I'm going to bump the ends of the unit, and then she will be good to go. Okay, we're almost done. I just always like to nitpick and make sure that the wig is perfect. So that's basically what I'm doing now, making sure she looks good and clean. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit more of the glow spray on. Let me just bump this one more time with the hot comb. I'm just gonna give her a little bump on her ends. All right. I think she is ready to go. So here we have today our natural long everyday bob. She is here and ready in the Atlanta Private Label location. Here she is, guys. Yeah, she's giving body. She's giving everyday. She's giving professional. And she's ready for the fall, ladies. Come pick me up today here at Private Label. Thank you. And again, it's your girl, Miss Asjah from the Wig Lab here at Private Label Atlanta. Have a good one. Bye.
Check. We got them bundles, we got them lace fronts, long, soft, short for every occasion. We sell nothing but quality, no competition. Slip your fingers in luxury on how we hit. Private label, la 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 la. Private label, la 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 la. Better come. Private label, la 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 la. Private label, la 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 la. We got that quality, they can't mess with us. Sustainable is a fact, come and run it up. We keep customers coming back cause our products are tough. We got prices that's unmatched, how you coming